Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about junior insecurities. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, great video as always. After you mentioned having no feelings in telling bad news to your superiors, I wonder, do you still have some junior-ish insecurities on the job? Or are you able to face all aspects of the work environment with no feelings? So this was posted on a video I made, which is called "How do programmers keep their cool when there is a tight deadline?" And I can only speak for myself, but in the early days it was harder for me because when you're a junior, you're scared that you're not fast enough, you're scared that your code is not good enough, etc., etc. But when you get more experience, at least for me, most of that goes away because at least I did. You come to that realization where if you miss a deadline when you've been working for years and you've shipped like 100 projects, many projects, and then you sort of realize that there are more things that can make up if you meet the deadline. Because a classic one that the example I use is, if you ask me to move a mountain and I only get a little shovel and a little bucket, and you say you do that in a week, and no, I'm never going to be able to do that, even if I'm the best digger in the world. And it's the same thing here. If you're the best software developer in the world and you need to build something that will take a year to build and they want it in a day, there's no way for you to fix that, even if you are. So I call it reasonable expectations, right? So those insecurities have gone. The thing that is left for me is the negative feedback insecurity. That's the only one that I can really think of. So let me explain that a little bit. So in the early days, I was of course very sensitive, which a lot of juniors are, towards when it comes to negative feedback towards my coding skill. Like maybe my coworkers don't like my code, or maybe my manager feels that I'm slow, etc., etc. These things were very prominent for me. Today they are very much not the case, because I know that, I've worked with so many coworkers and so many developers that I know that, and at some point you sort of realize that, yeah, my code is actually pretty good. Even if it's not perfect, it's pretty good. And you know that, well, even if like, how do I put this in a good way? In the early days, you take a lot. If you make an analogy to cars, if you make a really shitty car and it goes really quickly, or you make a really good car and it takes a little bit longer, you have different perspectives. So if your manager can see that, yeah, you take a little bit longer, but the output is really good, or you're doing really well, that's forgivable, if that makes sense. But if you take long and you make shitty results, that's not so good, right? In the early days, that's the case, right? You're a junior, you take longer even than the seniors, and the output isn't as good, which is pretty normal if you think about it, but it feels horrible. But I have reached that point where I can I can feel secure in making a shitty implementation really quickly, because I also know that I can make that high quality thing that takes a little bit longer. So I can scale the results that I produce to the time frame I have, and I can go all the way up to making these luxury cars, or like the really good code, if you want to call it that, right? The thing that I'm sensitive for, though, is negative feedback related to my interactions with other developers, or when I do leadership or things like that. So the reason behind that is that most of the time when I work with software developers, I get, at least when it comes to the times that when I'm supposed to lead or so forth, and this has been the case for a few times now in my career, where the responsibility of managing the team, or setting up like a project, or creating a strategy, or basically fixing the direction a project is going, because I've worked on quite a few projects that haven't been doing so well, and it's almost become, at this point, it's basically my unofficial job. I don't really know what my title is, but the closest thing I can come to describing it is a fixer at this point, where my managers have, over the past few years, basically said, yeah, here's this project, we need someone to take care of it, we need it to get up to like a good standard, because it's not doing so well, or something like that. And so it's almost restoration work, right? So they send me in, and then I have to sort of assess and take over the team and figure out, all right, how are you going to solve this problem? Now the problem here is that that's similar to if you put in someone like a coach or like a new boss in an environment, and I've told my manager that this is very sensitive, and it's not gone so well sometimes, where if you have a bunch of people who have been performing at a certain level, it's not given that they will like a lot of change, because if you're going to turn something that is low efficiency into something that is high performance, you're going to have to introduce some changes, and change is not always something that is welcome. And what happens, and has happened to me quite a few times, is that I try to introduce these changes, and my coworkers or whoever is unhappy with either me setting restrictions or like basically doing leadership. You've probably seen this before, guys. New boss comes into a work environment where everybody sort of knows everybody, starts to make a bunch of changes. Everybody hates their guts because they're making all these changes, and sometimes the boss is incompetent, which is not a good thing. But sometimes the problem is, as I said, we don't see the results we want from the work environment, and the problem is actually that, hey, these people are not doing a good job, we need to make some changes. And that's a bit of a balancing act, right? And so what happens is that, at least in my culture, very few people will tell you to your face that they don't like what you're saying, or they don't like you, they hate your guts. Usually they don't have much of an issue with my coding or something like that. It's usually, as I said, that I might ask them to write unit tests, or I might ask them to refactor some code, or I might tell them that, no, actually, I don't want you to just pick up an arbitrary card, like we have a work process that we need to follow, because we need to start focusing on getting bits of structure in the way the backlog is prepared, or we need to have a meeting to talk about preparations of like stories or things like that. And every person is different, guys. And so what happens is that they go to your manager, or at least me, and they complain behind your back. Now here comes the problem, because then you get a tap on the shoulder, at least I do, and my manager will tell me, yeah, you have some feedback. And it's like PSD or like post-traumatic stress syndrome for me when someone says that, because I've heard it quite a few times at this point. And when you get it from the wrong manager, you're in a really shitty spot, because the manager is basically incompetent or ignorant of what's going on in the work environment, which basically means that, as I've said to you guys before, even if you do really well and you try to do your best for the company, if your manager doesn't share your understanding of what needs to be done, or like so forth and so forth, they might just hear complaints, and complaints are bad, so you're automatically the villain because they have a bad relationship with you. And I have been there as well, guys, where I have been able to prove that actually my input is very appreciated, and the coworkers who actually know how things are going and how they used to go will see that there's a positive change. But the manager doesn't like me, and that's enough, because all they hear is that this other person who also is causing issues, like basically systematic problems for us, is complaining, and they're more willing to listen to that person just because they don't like me. And so I've been lucky a few times now in the past where I've gotten complaints, and I've told my manager the thing that I learned the hard way. It's very easy. I can fix all the complaints. All I have to do is to just facilitate. That's it. And what's going to happen is that the team will continue working exactly the same way they are used to. Everything is going to just continue the way it is. Or I might be able to tweak a thing here and there and like do these tiny symbolic things, which is usually what the product manager, like people who can't actually make meaningful change happen, that's what they will do. They will tweak and do things here and there, but they won't ever be able to solve the fundamental problems, because in their case they're incompetent, or like they're ignorant of how to do that. In my case, I know what to do, but because I get these complaints and you're more focused on that I deal with, because I've even gone as far, we need to fire this person because I won't be able to convert this person into someone who can do this job. And that's the reality. And as I said, if that's something that's not acceptable to my manager, all I have to do is to just push approve on the pull request and everything's fine. Because nobody dislikes a tech lead or a boss or like an architect who never gets in their way and only basically supports what they want. And that's, as I said, that's what management. If you just want to cover your ass, that's what you do. If you want to make something happen and actually make something meaningful, you're gonna have to actually stick your neck out a little bit, and that's something that I'm still very sensitive to. So what I want you to take away from this is that I, of course, have my own insecurities. My biggest one would be negative feedback from my peers or coworkers or the people that work in my team and so forth. Because, as I said, usually I've had a lot of these issues where you want to introduce a change, you disagree with an approach, or you shut down something that, I don't know, someone decides that they're not going to write any tests, or someone thinks that we should rewrite something in a new language, or so forth and so forth. Guys, you have no idea. There's a range of different complaints that you can get when you have the lead role in an IT team. Everything from coding practices to people feeling that you force them to do things that they don't want to do, or like you have a bad attitude and so forth. And it can be Can be anything, right? And then your manager gets a hold of this issue, who doesn't really know what's going on in the team, and then you're in a personal meeting. And if you have the wrong manager, they're gonna get you. You're gonna get into a lot of trouble. I have a few times. Let me just tell you that. And the thing that I try to do in these sort of situations, it used to be the case that I tried to fix it in a very bad way, where like I just got more and more insecure, and now I've just realized that, all right, if this happens, and I should tell my manager this, if I get these complaints, I will explain to them, here is what happened, at least from my perspective. And the problem is, it's word against word, right? It's always word against word. So I tell them my side of the story. I hope that they listen. And then I say, I can promise you that I will never get any more complaints after this, if you really want me to stop doing the thing that I'm doing. Because all I have to do is to press approve on the pull request, or not change anything. Because, as I've said, change is not something that will always be welcome in a situation like this, and nobody gets upset with a boss that does the thing that they're supposed to do but never changes anything that people don't want them to change. Have a great day.